Welcome to Friday, the 14th day of June, 2024. This Day Weather Podcast is being brought to you by Wyoming State Parks. Why wonder about the outdoors in Wyoming? Explore the statewide interactive outdoor recreation wonder map to find your next adventure. As we take a look at the weather pattern across the region, today there's going to be increased thunderstorm activity. Today in particular, less as we get into tomorrow and Sunday, especially becoming much less numerous west of the divide. But east of the divide, we might get some showers and thunderstorms. Hopefully they'll produce rain in your area and not too much severe weather, but there is a risk of severe weather today, and we'll show you where. The weekend, spotty thunder. As I just mentioned, east of the divide, west of the divide, not much. We do have a cooling trend for the northern Rockies, western Canada. A good part of the western United States is going to see cooler than average air move in. And I'll tell you, next week is a week of extremes. It's going to be kind of wild. It's going to be basically a media circus. We'll tell you that here in a moment, because we're going to have a lot going on over the next 7 to 10 days. And it all depends on where you are in terms of how you are going to view the summer season next week, as we're going to have big heat in the eastern U.S., while it's going to be much cooler than average in the west, and parts of the western North American continent will be the opposite. Also, at the end of the podcast, after we get through the forecast discussion, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on why the pattern has been this way this spring, and why some of you have gotten some good moisture and some of you have barely gotten any. There's a reason for it, and we'll talk about why the setup has developed as it has. Beautiful shot there of building clouds across the high plains with that little wave that we saw yesterday. Even a few thunderstorms continued overnight in a few areas. Today, this is the risk for severe weather. So you can see that yellow area covering a good chunk of eastern Colorado, parts of Nebraska and Kansas, clipping southeastern Wyoming there. The dark green is also an area of severe risk, with more general thunderstorm activity in the lighter green area. So if you're in those darker green or yellow areas, you'll want to keep an eye on the sky and watch out for a severe weather risk today. This is why there's that upper level disturbance we showed you yesterday. Yesterday we said that there really wasn't much moisture associated with it yet, but that might change. And when you look at the satellite photos this morning, boy, don't you see it. So that moisture we saw just starting to come up out of Arizona has really increased. So you can see there's moisture associated with the wave. There you can see that low. We had some nocturnal thunderstorms right there. You see that little tiny one right there that popped up southeast of Cheyenne? So we did see right along the edge of the moisture a little bit of nocturnal thunderstorm development overnight, which doesn't happen very often. But this moisture shield, this wave, has got to come through the area today, and with daytime heating, is going to produce showers and thunderstorms. The water vapor shows that the atmosphere has really increased its moisture supply. And there you can see the thunderstorm across southwest Nebraska, that tiny one right there. So with that deeper moisture in place, daytime heating, this is where the thunderstorm coverage will be the most numerous today. And you can see the darker shading, the more lightning intensity right here, where that severe weather bullseye is most likely going to be today. Tomorrow, the severe weather shifts more to the east, but notice this line kind of hangs along and near the divide. So thunderstorm activity will be found east of the divide for Saturday. This is what the thunderstorm coverage looks like. So take a look at this map showing you where, if you're going to be recreating outdoors this weekend, is where your biggest risk of thunder will be. This is Saturday. This is the outlook for Sunday. Up here, northeastern Wyoming and western South Dakota, late Sunday evening and Sunday night. Could have some strong thunderstorms up there. We'll need to keep an eye on it. General thunderstorm activity elsewhere. Now, when we take a look at what happens early next week, an interesting scenario unfolds. We have this next trough as the Pacific continues to churn out front after storm coming across the Gulf of Alaska. Well, the next one crashes the party in the Pacific Northwest, Montana, and northwestern Wyoming by Sunday night into Monday. So this is going to initiate some weather up here. But the flow of air, if you watch what happens, this low up here is going to really force a lot of air right out of the deserts towards the Midwest and the Great Lakes, while this high pressure dome right here brings Gulf of Mexico high humidity air. So you're looking at very warm Gulf of Mexico air being drawn into this high, desert air coming across the plains, much cooler air coming in from the northwest. Now it looks like a battle plan. We've got a lot of arrows going on here, but there is a lot going on. So this is going to build a dome of heat in the east. Cooler air spills into the west. So we're going to have a huge contrast across the nation over the next 7 to 10 days. So this is Monday, and this is by Wednesday. Basically, it holds into place. The pattern kind of gets stagnant. This heat dome grows and expands. The trajectory of the air, again, is from very warm areas, very humid areas, up into the northeastern United States. This will be a media circus. I'll just predict this right now. Next week and into next weekend, this is all you're going to hear about. But what you're not going to hear about is the anomaly in the west. The anomalies, as we mentioned yesterday, where you have one extreme, you have the other. So when you put these two together, there's a lot of different weather that'll be going on across North America. Also, as we showed you yesterday, we got a tropical depression forming here in the Western Gulf. And this is going to be something to keep an eye on for maybe Texas and areas of Mexico next week as well, as we showed you yesterday. So with this interesting dynamic of extremes, this is what the temperature anomaly looks like by Wednesday. So baking right here, and this area of heat will go down into D.C. and along the eastern seaboard late next week and next weekend. So there's going to be a lot of heat here, unseasonably cool conditions here. Well, how cool will it be in the west? Well, it's not going to be off the charts cold, but certainly well below average for the middle of June. And when you compare temperatures in the northeast by Wednesday, you can see the heat, and there's going to be some 100s mid to late next week here. But look at these, our high temperatures by Wednesday. So there'll be some 50s and 60s across a good part of the west, heat bottled up down there in the south. Now there's a bit of a trigger warning coming for some of you. Yeah, I'm actually throwing a snow map on the forecast for you today. This basically happens late Tuesday into Wednesday of next week. I think this is not unreasonable at all. I think the Canadian Rockies, maybe even parts of Yellowstone, the southwest Montana mountains area, the Idaho mountains, you can see it will be cold enough. Now these are higher peaks, okay? This is nothing that will reach the plains, but this shows you what can happen with the weather. Where you have one extreme, you'll get the other. This happens frequently. And not only in the northwest parts of the United States could snow levels get very low. Well, while it's going to be a heat wave here, it's going to be snowing in Greenland. This is why the weather's so fun. Never's boring. Now, going out further on, when we take a look further down the road, this is by next weekend. The high weekends in the northeast, and as we mentioned yesterday, there's going to be a little bit of a growth of high pressure back to the west. There's that tropical depression. It may, we'll see, it may start to bring heavy rains to South Texas, into Mexico, and some of that moisture works westward, something we'll talk more about next week. I want you to notice the strong jet stream winds still continue out of the Gulf of Alaska and across Canada, kind of keeping the flow flat. And this is important, and this is what's happened for most of the spring. But the high pressure will build westward, so will the heat. So the very cool weather here next week will translate back into some very warmer weather again. Then we'll be watching the moisture come in from Texas, Mexico, and work its way westward. So by 360 hours from now, this is by January 29th, we're kind of in the same pattern. This is really quite amazing. 2 weeks from now, the pattern may not change much. We continue to have these systems come in from the North Pacific. High pressure is trying to build in the southern plains, but this high pressure ridge keeps getting beat down by these strong jet stream winds coming off the Pacific, kind of what's happening now. So we'll have a lot going on in the lower latitudes. The higher latitudes still very active for this late in the season, and there's a reason for it. We'll talk about that right now. This is the latest sea surface temperature anomaly. Here's the developing La Nina, but what we're going to focus on is what's going on right here. From a big view, I want you to notice the green and the blue. These are anomalously cold or colder than average sea surface temperature values in the far north Pacific here. This is next to a warm anomaly. And when you have a warm anomaly and a cold anomaly, you're going to create a temperature gradient. That temperature gradient is going to help enhance jet stream winds and pressure gradients and all of those things and make it very busy, which it's been across the North Pacific, causing a lot of lows to form. And then they head this way. And that's what I just showed you, a very active jet stream going on through. So we've got La Nina forming here. We have these colder waters up there right next to warmer waters. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. Now, if we compare to where we were a year ago, it was completely different. We had cold waters up there and we had a bit of a contrast, but not nearly as sharp. And we also had the developing El Nino, which kind of took over, as we all know, last spring and summer. So there's a lot of difference between this year and last year in terms of sea surface temperature anomalies and conditions. Look how much the sea surface temperature anomalies have changed. This is since the first part of January. So right after the new year, up to the first part of June, look at how those sea surface temperatures have cooled significantly along the equator. The Indian Ocean basin as well, but we've had the reverse. They've really warmed up here, and this has caused the contrast as they've gotten colder there. So these areas I just circled all play a really big role in our weather in the western United States, even though these areas are very, very far away. So let's focus in on the North Pacific a bit more. Here's that anomaly of warmth. Here's that anomaly of cold. And as long as this holds, this is just going to become a natural breeding ground for lows and keep the jet stream strong and active. And this is what ends up happening when you go from one phase change to another. So what I'm showing you is from November 1st to March 31st. What I'm showing you are the 500 millibar anomalies, like the 500 millibar maps I show you all the time. Where you see the purples and the blues, you want to imagine where there's, generally speaking, more often than not, troughs and ridges. So the highs are going to be in these colors here. The lows are going to be in the blue and purple. If we were to idolize where an ideal pattern of the jet stream would look like this. This is how the jet stream was for most of November through March. This is what you would expect in an El Nino, where you have a low in the southern branch. You tend to have the jet stream more biased to the south. And it did bring a very wet pattern to California, parts of the far west and southwest over the winter season. This is how it was for the beginning of winter with El Nino. This is really pretty much a textbook El Nino pattern right there. But look what's changed since May 1st. Since May 1st, we've seen it flip. We're going to more often than not have lows here, the highs in the different colors. And if we were to just average it all together, this means the jet stream is going to be more like this, okay, coming in very strong from the Pacific Northwest, coming on in, not allowing the high to build and allowing moisture to come up from the south. So this ends up making this part of the country wet, which is exactly what's happened. But what ends up happening further south of the jet stream is a downsloping effect. And if you were to look at the forecast for the next 24 hours to 10 days. So this is from today out to 10 days. These are the jet stream winds. So for point of reference, here are the Aleutians. Here's Alaska. Okay, here's over into the Asian continent. So you can see that the jet stream winds just stay really strong. So this continues to be a breeding ground for these lows going across the North Pacific. So this is what we've ended up having. And this is one why the spigot just turned off. So this area, again, this is general. This area has had enhanced precipitation since May 1st. It just has picked up significantly. But in these green and yellow areas, it has dried out considerably in some locations, especially in that area right there. Well, why? Because the jet stream has gone north. When you are south of the jet stream, you're going to be in a naturally drier area. Now, we have seen some precipitation pick up in some of these areas here, which is good. Let's hope that's happening. But this red area has really basically been picked on. It's a function of latitude, where the pattern has set itself up, but also this. So this area right here, if the flow is more westerly, you're going to have the downsloping effect where air comes down the divide, it sinks, humidity decreases, temperatures tend to be warmer, but the air east of the divide really dries out. So while these areas up here were able to get the fronts, the low pressure systems that causes the lift, brings in that Pacific moisture, makes it wet, areas just to the south of that end up with the downsloping effect. And if we look out to 10 days, same situation right here. So the areas that are wet will continue to get wet. Areas that are going to be dry just have to hope that these afternoon and evening thunderstorms and moisture that occasionally comes up from the south, which is basically what's going to happen today, is going to give you opportunities for showers and thunderstorms. So this change in the Pacific and the timing of it has led to this pattern that looks to be persistent here for at least a couple more weeks. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.